Conversations about the soul.
Yeah. Wow.
To recap, what I got from you last time is the soul is a point of awareness. It has observation and the ability to question.
hmm Free will. And the soul, you know, even if time and space is an illusion, growth and continuity is still a thing. The soul, whether the research is all there or not, there's enough evidence, whether it's like scientific or anecdotal, that shows that memory is a thing. Like data does evolve, data does stick around, and it's especially through the DNA. So the DNA is the physical archives of our soul's choices on the physical reality. It really is.
Whoa, hold on. Will you repeat that? The soul, wait, DNA is the physical archive of the
Of the
soul
soul's journey.
of the soul's journey. Wow.
Yeah. So I can speak freely based on my beliefs. Yeah. So
Mhm.
I believe that consciousness and awareness exists far beyond just on Earth, and the experience on maybe a different planet or a different reality could be just so different. But at least on Earth, because that's our only point of reference, um, we exist through these human bodies, and the human body, we contain memory, we contain DNA, we contain all this stuff. But I read this series of books that talked. It's Dr. Michael Newton. He talked. He's a hypnotherapist that specialized in like past life regression therapy, and I really liked his definition of the soul, where he states that the soul starts off as this like golden yellowish point of light, or sorry, it starts off as like a yeah, no, a white light. It starts off as this pure white light, and then through all these different incarnations, it actually changes color over time, almost like going through the entire rainbow, going from like red, orange, green, all up to violet until eventually gets to this point where it reaches this like solid gold. It goes from this
Mm.
pure white to the solid gold. And the reason why it's changing, and my own interpretation of that is, you have these experiences where the soul is faced with choices, challenges, all that stuff. And on a physical level, you have this very direct ability to observe what your choices do. But it's also, there's some record of it being transcribed on a spiritual level, and
Mm.
that could be like your memories, your emotions, your beliefs that you form through all of this, and that get kind of passed on. And then referencing the Seth material about how all these incarnations are happening simultaneously, I like to think of it as, consciousness is like this beam of light shooting through this prism. And through this prism, it splits off, right? And each of those split offs are almost a different color, a different refraction, but they're also each a different soul. Studying a lot of this past life or simultaneous life stuff through many different references, whether it's past life regression or the Seth series or channelers, um, what, one thing that I have gleaned is that every incarnation can be very different. Every incarnation, it's almost like the soul wants diversity and experience. The soul craves diversity, because like imagine if you all of a sudden were in this lucid dream where you can make anything that you want possible, anything happen. You would be, but you didn't understand it. You're in this lucid dream. You can make anything happen, but you don't understand how or why it's happening. There's this point of curiosity. The soul, I believe that the soul at its root is unlimited curiosity.
Mm.
I there's this, Seth actually references this too, and I love this story that Seth proposes. But Seth's like, Jane asks, like, or Robert asks, like, what, how would you define the beginning of creation? Like, how does this all start? And Seth obviously is like, I'm going to speak this in a linear fashion, but obviously this didn't happen in space time. This happened on a much higher dimension. But imagine there was just this awareness, and the awareness asked itself, what am I? The moment it was able to become aware of itself, many things happened at once. It caused the first split, where it was able to In order to define your existence, you have to have something outside of you as reference. And in the beginning, awareness only had itself. So it was able to ask, if I am this, then what am I not? And that question all of a sudden began this infinite journey into self-discovery. I like to think of God as an ongoing question. Like, what am I? Well, you can answer that question in one moment, but then that answer generates another question and another question. It's like the infinite stream of questions. So the soul, the human, at least the way that I interpret it, the soul is one of the infinite questions being asked. And we spend this one lifetime trying to just answer that question to our unique ability, to the best of our own unique ability that we can. What is existence? What is God? Well, in my case, it's Lee. And Lee is this person that had this history making these choices. That's one answer to that question, along with many infinite variations. Tyler is also an answer to that same question. It's one answer. It's one answer to this question that will generate more and more questions. Um, so the soul, and the reason why I believe we have all these incarnations is, imagine, okay, there are some obviously amazing things about being alive right now, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
as challenging as it is, being alive on this reality is it's fucking phenomenal. We have this thing called emotion, and this emotion makes everything is what it is. And as big as this place is, and with infinite varieties of experiences we can have, let's really be honest with ourselves. You cannot get everything out of the human experience with just one lifetime. That's
Mm-hmm.
fucking impossible. There's just no way. It would make sense that you would want to imagine you saw Earth as this like really complex simulation program, and you walk by and you're like, man, what is this chaotic mess? This is fascinating. Look at all these creatures and different skin colors and doing different things and interact, like what is this? And like there's just like so many questions you want to ask about this. So only way you can answer is by simulating it for yourself. Like, okay, what is this Earth program about? Well, I'm going to answer my own question by just simulating it. Can you get the entire human package off of just one lifetime? I just no, obviously no. There's way too much experience. So the at least where I'm at currently with my belief about the soul and incarnations is that you are this point of awareness, this ability to observe and ask questions. You come across this simulation called Earth, and you ask yourself, what does it mean to be human? And as this one point of awareness passes through the Earth simulation, it's like that one beam of light hitting that prism. Imagine Earth as that prism. That one beam of light hits that prism, aka Earth. It splits off to all these different fragments, and each of those fragments contains within them a part of the whole that is the answer of this is what it means to be human. So you're going to, the light splits off. You'll have one lifetime as like a black woman in Haiti during the 1500s. You'll be a Native American, a part of the Hopi tribe like 1,000 years ago. You'll be a Jew during the time of Christ. All these completely varied experiences that somehow still tie together, like somehow still create this comprehensive picture. And then it comes back together. It comes back together, and that experience, the process of going through that experience, I think forever changes that awareness. Like a fundamental belief about existence and consciousness is that everything's energy, right? Everything's energy. And what is energy? Energy is just a series of waves. It's a series of vibrations. I'm sure you'll possibly read this in the Seth series, and Abraham and other channels reference this, but we all have our own unique signature frequency. There's the energetic makeup of Tyler is a unique frequency, like a perfectly unique like a radio station channel. It's a Tyler channel, and it's unique. Like nothing else can change it or alter it. Like it'll always exist. It always has existed, and it'll forever exist as the Tyler channel. Now, it's unique and it's separate and it's distinct, but the frequency can change. Your amplitude, your frequency in terms of like the rate, the richness and the complexity, the frequency changes, and the way that it changes is based off of just, I think, just living life. You know, like who you are now, Tyler, very different than 20 years ago. You know, your choices and your experiences have changed your unique frequency. So
You
the
said that
soul,
may I?
yeah, yeah.
So you said that we have a signature frequency,
Hmm.
but then you're also saying that it shifts through time. So what part of that is signature and stays with us through all of the maybe different incarnations, different life experiences, and the adaptations? How does that, is it bandwidth that shifts? Is it amplitude? Is the frequency itself? Uh, it's a
Ooh.
signature like a fingerprint, but it's a continuation. So again, if it's a linear thing, then it's
That's a damn good
constantly in
question.
motion.
Yeah. And it's going to be kind of because like this is a question that we're trying to find an answer that's based out of like space-time thinking, right? So that I'm going to try to come up with a apropos answer. Like um, if I use my creativity, my imagination to tap in to answer that question, imagine Tyler's unique frequency is just the melody of a song, okay? But imagine starting off.
Woo!
It's a melody, like it's a song that doesn't change. Do you remember the name of the song that you really enjoyed that you wanted to use as the intro and outro to your podcast when we first started hanging out?
Oh yeah, it's Rhino Dub.
Rhino Dub, yeah. Imagine Tyler's unique frequency is Rhino Dub, but when you were very first born, imagine just a very basic 8-bit synth. Like it's just one instrument, like a very basic synthesizer, and that it starts off. It's playing the melody of Rhino Dub. Like, okay, this is obvious Rhino Dub, but it's super 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 simple. It's just one. It's just one instrument, right? And
Hmm.
over time, you learn about maybe you acquire a drum sounding instrument. It changes the song, but it's still the song. You can recognize, okay, this is still Tyler's song. Over time, maybe you'll add some effects like reverb. Maybe you'll add some effects like vocals. Maybe you'll add some effects. Maybe there's a choir. There's a brass section. Over time, you're changing the feel and the flow of the song, but it's still the song. You still recognize this is Rhino Dub. Maybe it's a remix. Every 5 years is a different remix, but it's still Rhino Dub, and no other person has Rhino Dub. I guess that that's if I was trying to get to answer that question, that's my best shot. Is everyone has their own unique melody, and that's their signature vibration.
So we're
Song.
creating the song of our soul.
Yes, yeah, we're creating the song of our soul, and I believe that you have I don't know if you read this in the Seth book or not, but there's an oversoul level, right? So
Right, right. Seth too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So just as how each of our incarnations are like fingers, like if this is our soul, and each of these incarnations are like fingers, right? So there's Tyler, and then there's your past and your future selves, all part of the same hand. Well, that soul also is part of an oversoul that's got other forearms and other fingers sticking out. And maybe, and like this is something that we at the ego physical level can't comprehend yet, but maybe the unique signature vibration that we're trying to refine and develop and express is part of an even bigger orchestration. Like, what if you die, Tyler, and then you meet your soul level, and all your incarnations that produce their own unique signature, like their own songs, when you layer the songs over, it creates this beautiful orchestral piece. It's a
Hmm.
multidimensional orchestral piece, and that is like that soul telling the universe, this is what I am, and this is how I exist. This is how I fit into existence. And then it probably just escalates. There might be like even more complex, more infinitely diverse forms of orchestral pieces that our oversouls make up. But
So
it's all
is there a container? Is there a wrapper? Is there an end, so to speak, or is it a constant from your objective perspective? Is
yeah.
there a constant, a Seth 2, a Seth 3, a Seth 4, a Seth 5, right? Is there
Hmm.
a layer and layer and layer of ascension of the soul? And if so, then uh, would that be kind of the oneness theory, right? How
Precisely.
so source might be an amalgamation of all of these different souls combined, like the ultimate orchestra.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I really like the idea, like the visual reference of just white light. Like
Mm.
if you have like if you have the latest version of Photoshop, the ability to pick your palette of colors. It started off from like 64 colors to like over 1 million choices of colors, right? There's like this huge spectrum of range. Well, as we get more and more complex and more inwards, we see that there's like this infinite spectrum of color. But when you combine all of it, it's still just a solid white light. That's the oneness. That's the allness. And in my search, because we naturally are born with fear. We're naturally born with fear because we live in a world where it's important. It's not all bad. It keeps us alive. It keeps us going. But that fear can be applied to like large metaphysical questions, like, well, what happens to me when I die? And although we can't quote unquote prove it, based off of both my research and my own personal experiences, the individual never dies. The individual has to always exist forever in order for the whole to exist in general. So yeah, there has always been a Tyler, and there will always be a Tyler.
So how do you define the concept of beginning or end, any sort of that linear fashion? So on one hand, you're saying there's always been a Tyler frequency, there's always been a Lee frequency, right? And it shows up through different fingers, different incarnations, different elements, different ways of observing the awareness, right? So then how come, scientists say 13.8 billion years ago there was a bang?
Yeah.
Right? Where's the relevancy of that? And if so, how does that concept of time or an origin point, in your perspective, fill out to, wouldn't there be a logical endpoint?
So that's a pretty big question. I'll do my best to answer it.
Thanks.
The Big Bang, the theory of the Big Bang is relatively new, and the theory of the Big Bang has actually been losing traction. Although the data shows us, based off of the latest technology, that we can kind of estimate 13.8 billion years ago, now there's a lot of additional theories popping up saying there actually could be infinite Big Bangs, and we're only aware of just the one that we're able to see and exist in. In terms of beginning and endpoint, the Big Bang signifies the beginning of just our universe. However, and you'll come to discover this in the Seth series as well, like there obviously are infinite different parallel universes, and in the third to fourth dimensional level, in order for us to have this experience, there has to be this linearity, right? But if you go to the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, is as you go up on dimensions, that linearity completely loses reference. And consciousness, I've come to experience and understand, although it can abide by this time-space continuum, like that's how we're able to have this human experience, it very easily can also shift a gear up. It can exist outside of time and space. So if it can exist outside of time and space, then beginning and endings don't really matter at all. It almost doesn't make sense on a higher level. But
talk about that higher level perspective, if you would. What is that like, going from 3 dimensions to 4? And if so, how far up, if we're to use that scale, how far have you gone or experienced or perceived?
I believe I experienced, okay, let's see. Okay. Have you heard of, like, do you know what a Mobius strip is?
No.
Okay. Yeah. If you just Google on your desktop, Mobius strip. Let's see. I'll do it too.
Yeah, actually, if you want, you could just share your screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right at the bottom it says, screen share. Then you can pick just a tab, or you can pick your whole desktop or whatever.
Okay. Let me do that then. Pull up Zoom and then share screen. Firefox posted to Neil.
Woo!
All right.
We're live. Mobius strip.
Mobius strip, yeah. So a Mobius strip, band, or loop, also spelled Mobius or da-da-da-da, is a surface with only one side and only one boundary. The Mobius strip has the mathematical property of being unorientable. It can be realized as a rule surface or whatever. I'll go to the
Whoa.
Wikipedia. Yeah, so and anyone can construct one. You can take a strip of paper, you twist one end, and then you tape it together. And like in elementary, I remember doing an experiment with this. They're talking about concepts of like multidimensional mathematics, and you take a pencil and you could put it on this end right here, and you never have to take the pencil off. You just keep the pencil on, and you can run it across the Mobius strip, and you will eventually end up right where you started. You can create this complete line. So it's a very rough kind of concept of this infinite loop, even though it's like in a third dimension, this idea of infinite loops, like it's mathematically impossible, right? So, but this is like a really rudimentary, rough way to illustrate this. So imagine, okay, so let me blow this up. There we go. So imagine this is time and space. Time and space. If you're
Okay, hold on.
then
Buckling up.
okay.
Go for it, buddy. Let's see it. Yeah, take a sip.
Okay, so I like, this is going to be just an exercise, just imagination, right? This is just
Okay.
for fun. I don't speak as an authority. This is just how I interpret it and what makes sense to me. But I see, Einstein has talked about how time and space is indeed sort of a fabric. It's a fabric of sorts where objects of mass can affect each other, or gravity can kind of come into play. But it's this fabric, and the ideas of traveling faster than the speed of light treats time and space as a fabric because you have the ability to puncture through the fabric to join from point A to point B. So in Star Trek or Star Wars, and talk about the warp drive, imagine our universe is right here on the Mobius strip, okay? This is like the Milky Way galaxy. And then Andromeda is way the fuck over here. It's like how many billions of light years away. Well, the warp drive would just be literally, if this was a piece of paper, you would compress the two pieces of paper together, take a little needle and poke a hole through. So instead of traveling this whole expanse, you have the ability to warp the time-space fabric and then just kind of puncture through. That's kind of the theoretical concept of teleportation. But how this applies or affects to your earlier question, this is a way that I like to imagine reality exists. So the Big Bang produces, in a sense, this Mobius strip, but I believe, like, if we're going off the basis that consciousness has always been, if there was no beginning and end, then there had to be a point. This Mobius strip, this quote unquote universe, had to exist before the Big Bang. This is just existence in general. Imagine if this point right here on the time space was, like, you see this little cross section, was the Big Bang, okay? And then we are right here. And this is only 13.8 billion years. Well, theoretically, you could go before the time of the Big Bang, and you can go after. And you can go along this loop as many times as you want forward and as many times as you want backwards, but it all still exists. It's all just there, and it's just, I'm trying to get the best way. Yeah, I mean, it's always existed. The Mobius strip and time spaces in this infinite loop has always existed, I guess. So maybe on this third dimensional level, this might be a way for us to interpret infinity and existence. But on another dimensional level, there are these advanced geometrical shapes on the 4th, 5th, and 6th dimensional level that we can use advanced computers to computate, but the human mind conceptually can't wrap our minds around.
Can you show any of those examples?
Yeah, let me take a look here. There was a really good podcast that talked about this, actually.
We need to get my friend Grayson on this this next one that we do around this subject. He's the other person that I talk to on this kind of level that's very, very deep like you. And oh my goodness, that would be tremendous to see both of you guys like play it off of each other and feed it in, because he's the one that actually showed me this hypercube first. That was like
really?
3 years ago. Yeah.
Oh shit. I I uh I want to brush up on this more and learn about it more. I just have a very, very broad general knowledge. He'd probably walk circles around me, but I was
Oh, no, no, no.
down to join.
He's the same kind of person as you. Like, it has nothing to do with his profession. He's not a doctor or
Oh,
anything like that. He's just an incredibly interested, fascinating, curious soul.
hell yeah, yeah, that'd be fun. I'd be totally down. So there's this idea. Yeah, so I guess just to recap, like a tesseract is a hypercube. It's just what a cube looked like in fourth dimensional space. Well, there's a fifth dimensional version of this, a sixth dimensional, a seventh dimensional.
So,
There's
can you actually explain what we're seeing here, though? Because a three-dimensional cube makes sense, right? I have a
yeah,
rock. It says Imagine on it. I like
yeah,
that. It's tactile. It fills up this much space. It weighs this much, right?
yeah.
So, what is it that we're looking
Hmm.
at then? If there's the cube, but then the tesseract has another layer, is that energetic? Is that something that we can actually see or
Oh,
touch or interact
okay.
with?
Yeah, so it's simply the fourth dimensional level is something that I don't think we could. Um, okay, so I'll try my best. Three dimensions, it's obvious. Height, weight, depth. Not weight, width. Height, width, depth. Three dimensions, cube. The fourth dimension is, from what most people have kind of come to the point of is time. The fourth dimension is time. Beyond that, I couldn't really comment too well. There's a really good YouTube video. It's actually only 2 minutes long. Let me see if we can just watch it real
Dude,
quick.
that's perfect. That sounds
Yeah,
great. Plus
I
time.
just got to remember, let's see, 10 dimensions explained. So yeah, in 2 minutes. So it's a really good job explaining it. I can actually do a better job explaining with a human. I think um, we can watch this real quick. Uh, I think this is it. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Will you full screen it? I don't have any audio.
Okay. I went to full screen. There we go. How about now? Do you have visuals?
It is come back up. It's just under half of the page. There we go. Now it's full screen.
Okay.
At 12 seconds in.
All right. I'm going to go back a little bit. We'll just watch this really quickly, and then I'll reference back to maybe an example
Perfect.
for the human person,
And then
how I think it could apply.
if I can't hear it, if
Yeah.
our listener can't hear it, do you want to just go ahead and describe what it is that we're watching?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm going to press play, and if you can't hear any audio, then I'll just send you the link to this video as well, and then yeah, I can definitely describe. Are you hearing
Yeah,
any
there's
audio?
no audio.
Okay. I'm wondering if there's a zoom setting. I bet you there is.
Bet you there is.
More. Okay. You know what? We can figure it out later. Uh,
One dimensions, many points make a line. Two dimensions, make a plane.
so now we're in 3D. Many planes make a space. 3 dimensions.
Many
Many
spaces make a
spaces make a
world
world
line.
line. 4 dimensions.
Many world lines make a
Probably
probability plane.
in the 5 dimensions. Okay, so just to kind of recap, like very basic stuff, right? We understand up to 3D, and then 4D talks about time. Um, there's this concept of the fourth dimensional human that I really liked. It was explained by someone that, okay, so if every single Planck second, which is like the smallest measurement of time that we'd be able to mathematically devise, a Planck second, if you took a Planck second of every, if we took a snapshot of, let's say, let's use you, Tyler. We take, somehow we have the technology, like maybe your life is a simulation, like a 3D simulation, right? And each frame of that simulation on the Planck second, there's a snapshot that's being taken, like a fourth dimensional picture, right? From the moment that your father's sperm hits your mom's egg to the moment you take your last breath on your deathbed. You take that little snapshot, right? Now, let's using your imagination, if you were to line up all those snapshots, if you were to zoom out and you see the planet Earth, like you're an astronaut, and you line up all those snapshots, you would see a fourth dimensional Tyler snake. Because think about it, if all of your snapshots were all lined up, you would look like some crazy weird snake thing.
So as an example, you could take your phone and you could pull up your Photos app and you're zoomed into one photo, and then you pinch out, and now all of a sudden you see a couple photos next to each other. You pinch out again, and now all of a sudden you see them combined. You zoom out again and you see by the month or by the year. It's a similar process, right?
Yeah, but it's creating a cohesive shape. So okay, I'm trying to give a good example. So on some of the old Windows XP programs, remember when something would fail and you could drag the window and it caused all these copies? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but imagine that, but with you. Imagine, so like if there's like a picture of me like here, 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 and you line it up, there'd be one blurry long line of Lees from each little snapshot. Now take that and blow it up across your whole life. So where were you born, Tyler?
Juneau, Alaska.
So imagine the snake starts in Juneau, Alaska, and you travel all over the world, right? You've been to several places already. Like name 3 other countries you've been to so far, off the top of your head.
I've been to Canada. I've been to Germany briefly, and I've been to Australia.
Australia. Yeah, so that would be part of the Tyler snake. So to start on this, you see like this, if you looked at the Earth, right? And here's Alaska, you see the Tyler snake eventually make its way to Australia, to Germany, to Canada, to Portland, down to Lake Tahoe. And it's like it's kind of like this weird crisscross, like a squiggly line. But that in a snapshot is what Tyler is a fourth dimensional entity.
Now, so it's consolidating everything that would be contained within time as we perceive it, right?
That's your fourth dimensional self.
Ha.
Is that entire?
Okay, how does probability play into that?
Now we go into the fifth dimension. The fifth dimensional. So you start off in Juneau. So here's so when it comes to this gets kind of trippy. Let's pretend in this example, only way Tyler could have ever been born, like your birthday and your place of birth doesn't change at all.
Okay.
Imagine Tyler the creationist as a simulation. It's a video game. It's a video game with multiple endings. There's easily a Tyler that never went to Germany or Australia. There's a Tyler that never started their own business. There's a Tyler that got married really young and has kids already. There's an infinite variety of Tylers. So if you don't change the beginning point, birthday, Alaska, Juneau, but everything else is a variable, you start seeing the fifth dimensional version of you, where instead of seeing one defined Tyler snake, where you were born in one place, you die in one place, and you had all these experiences, now you're seeing all of those Tyler snakes overlap. That's the fifth dimensional Tyler.
How? Sick. Because there's infinite possibilities there then, right?
Yes and no. There is a finite limit to the Tyler experience because, like I said, in this example, your birthday and your place of birth doesn't change. Just in this example. It gets more complicated if your parents could have picked another place and another place that you might have been born. That's just it. If you were born somewhere else in a different time, I don't know if you would be Tyler per se. That's why, and this is like, this gets really heavy and heady. So I'm only limiting the theoretical exercise as we have one concrete point, which is your birth date and your place of birth. That doesn't change. For the fifth dimensional example.
Can I pull on that thread slightly?
Yeah. Ask away.
Okay, so four dimensions seems really easy to grasp, right?
Yeah.
It's just take the consolidation of your life and be able to view that at one point, right?
Yeah.
So then fifth dimensions would be all the potential or the probable outcomes that you could have had during that same time frame. So still a linear being that as a beginning and an end point. Is that correct? So you're saying that the container is around birth and death. That's what the symphony, the orchestra is constructed upon. So if that was adjusted at any point, it could have been somebody else's. Maybe it's not Lee. Maybe it's not Tyler. It's not Lee. It's Grayson, right? Maybe it's another person if it's outside of that birth and that death points. Is that what you're saying?
I like going back to the idea of DNA, like at least for the human experience and for Earth, which is the only reference point we have and the only reference point that we really need to speak about because we're humans talking to other humans. If we limit it to just the human concept, I think a really good starting point is to limit to DNA. Your DNA, obviously, everyone's DNA is unique. Tyler is Tyler. Your DNA signature is, honestly, it's a really good analogy or representation of your unique frequency, signature frequency. So maybe your place of birth could have been different, but the DNA of what you are, the way that your dad's sperm and your mom's egg met up to create that zygote, that is the unique Tyler zygote. And how that DNA plays out, all those different types of lives or whatever, there's still that base of Rhino Dub. The base of Tyler's DNA is Rhino Dub. Now, you've already read here. Actually, you're gonna get a kick out of it. I actually have this right close hand. I've been peeking into it. I have in my hand Dr. Joe Dispenza's
Becoming Supernatural.
Yes.
I love that book.
And so because you've already read it, so you understand the idea of epigenetics, like this, which Seth has also talked about. You'll come to read. Seth's already described epigenetics. So our DNA does change, but just minorly, very little.
I thought that it's not actually the DNA that changes, but it's how it expresses itself.
Yes.
The code is still the same.
The code is still the same. Yes, thank you for the correction. You're right, exactly. How it expresses itself changes. So, Tyler, the Rhino Dub song will always be. But
it's a good song.
It is a good song. and from the fifth dimensional perspective, you're listening to infinite variations of Rhino Dub at once. That's fifth dimensional Tyler. Imagine listening to so like if you're trying and this isn't like maybe the most apropos example, but it's just a fun exercise imagination. We can picture the fourth dimensional Tyler Rhino Dub signature frequency. Imagine taking the very first iteration, which is like the very basic synth, right? The 8-bit synth, like Tyler's born, so it's very simple, the melody of the song, and then Tyler as an old man, where you've gained all this experience, all this wisdom, you've grown a lot, and maybe the Rhino Dub is like very built out, like a complete orchestra, right? You have like a whole goddamn orchestra and a DJ and electronic synths. You have every instrument you can possibly imagine. It's perfectly harmonized, like the most articulate version of Rhino Dub. And you take all those versions and you just stack them on top of each other. That's the fourth dimensional snapshot of your soul, using this analogy of a song as your frequency. And then a fifth dimensional version of that would be taking those infinite variations, all of the infinite variations, and then layering those on top of each other. Like in this lifetime, it's impossible to say. Like you're existing in fourth, and you and I are both existing in all dimensions right now. There's a really good, I'm not going to be able to find it because I don't know the terminology, but I'm going to draw it. I'm going to draw it.
Perfect. Here.
I don't think this is my original idea. I think I've read about this a long time ago, but I'm going to try to just hash it out the best I can. So is it text reversed, by the way?
No, it's actually I see a cone of probability. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then time and place of what's the bottom word?
Of birth.
Oh, a birth. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's
Okay.
another way to kind of illustrate us as souls and our whole life. This cone of probability could maybe be a fifth dimensional snapshot of let's like going back to using you as an example. So this entire paper and beyond this paper is all possible realities in existence. Okay. Anything that your imagination can come up with, let's say theoretically, does exist. There is a yarn tie. Like, okay, did you ever watch that movie or read the book? Oh God, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I need to. I have not.
You didn't see the movie either?
No.
There's this funny part where they're traveling in the spaceship, and I don't know what they're using some type of technology to like jump through these different dimensions. And there's like one dimension where they're like yarn people, one dimension where they're like clay animation people, one dimension where they're like two-dimensional. There's like all these variations of who they are, right? So there's like these infinite versions of like what reality can be. But out of the infinite possibilities, there's this one cone that's carved out that's reserved for you, the Tyler experience. Now, the reason why it's this cone is because this is the place of birth. Now, in this cone is everything that can possibly be related to you. Outside of this cone could be something like right outside this cone could be a different timeline. So let's say the Beatles playing their first concert. That was like what, in the 60s? That's completely outside your cone. Because of where and when you were born, the Beatles' first concert was never going to be in your cone of probability. Does that kind of make sense? So there's
Right.
certain events, places, events, and time, like this all factors in the cone of probability. Because of when and where you were born, there are things that will never be in your cone. But because of where you're born, there are things that are included in your cone. So like, do you have any older family members that have deceased recently?
Uh,
You want me asking, like maybe a grandparent or a great grandparent, or
yeah, I mean it's been a little bit. Some of my cousins they both had people pass away that were younger due to recent events, but
shoot.
um, yeah. In fact, actually, I told you about my grandma Joe's passing because I was there. I was
Yeah.
holding her in that time, and so let's use that as the example because my goodness, that was
Yeah.
profound.
If okay, I didn't mean to make it super personal. I guess the reason why I bring it up is
Oh,
because
please. I'm an open book, man. I have no problem talking about this stuff. I mean, clearly you've got my date of birth, social security number.
you're gonna start getting some weird identity theft reports coming your way soon. Okay, this is gonna look kind of funky.
Good. That's what Rhino Deb looks like. It's
That's
kind of
right.
funky.
So if this
Mm.
was time and space, let's say we go back a couple of decades. This is your grandma when she was born, right? Um,
Oof.
your grandma, her cone of probability because of her time of her death, and this is a fourth dimensional snapshot. This line right here is the coronavirus pandemic, this crazy world-changing experience that you and I are alive to see. This was never in her cone of probability
Hmm.
as an event. On the fourth dimension, on the fifth dimension, there could have been a Grandma Joe who does experience, who's alive to this day and does experience this. So these are like different like little snap. What I'm trying to illustrate is like,
But how is it? Oh, because her life endpoint could have been further down the line just
yeah,
by
so
2 years.
the end of the cone, yeah, exactly. The cone represents like life. Now, the reason why it's a cone and it's not just a straight line or a squiggly line is because as you progress through life, the variability increases exponentially. The variability. So like
Mm.
between the ages of 1 and 3 for your life, there's not much variation besides your parents moving around or whatever. You have to learn how to walk. You have to learn how to eat. You have to learn how to wipe your own butt. Like there's these common, pretty expected things to, yeah, it's like it's very limited. But as you get older and as your brain develops, as you become more cognizant, as you can think more and make more complex choices, your ability to uh, understand yourself and choices in life and to choose gets more and more complex as you get older, and more opportunities and events happen as you get older too. So the further you go out in life, the more variability there is. But it's still a cone, because outside of this cone could be like, if I'm trying to think of another good example. This cone is still limited to observable objective events on this planet Earth. So let's say on a fifth dimensional snapshot, we're going to use the same starting point for your life, but I'm going to draw a whole nother cone. Okay, so there's a cone next to this cone. It's really cruddy drawing, but in this timeline, or in the same place, same timeline, everything, this is a separate reality that's very similar, but the coronavirus never happened. And that Tyler exists now as well. So on the fifth dimensional snapshot, we're seeing completely different parallel, like there's similarities, but I'm kind of just like spiraling out. But
You're doing great, man. You're
does that
doing
kind of making
great.
sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Help us to understand. It was easy to grasp with a single cone. And
Yeah.
there's a point of origin, and then the variability as we grow in intelligence, scope, possibilities, physical potential, etc. That grows. And then so hence our world, our universe, if we're the center of the universe, because
Yeah.
we all are as point of awareness from my perspective. So it doesn't matter what exists out there, it's still being perceived through this vehicle, this vessel, all of my senses. So I'm the point of the universe from that perspective. Yes. Here's my cone. That makes great sense. Love that. Seeing grandma's cone in there, that makes great sense. Seeing the fifth dimensional reality of myself seems like it wouldn't be one additional cone, it would be infinite additional cones, but they would have that same point of origin. So maybe it's perceived as a dot with a circle around
like
it.
A sphere. Maybe all the cones combine into a sphere. It's kind of weird trying to create three-dimensional models of this, but yeah. Actually, no. Now that I think about it, I might have led us astray a little bit in this example. Let me redraw the cone.
Oh, now it's getting good.
So actually, yes. the cone as a snapshot is your fifth dimensional self. But if I draw a line, any kind of weird line, like a squiggly line, this line, let's say the top of the cone is your death. I mean, not really, because you could die, honestly, there's like infinite ways you could die at any age range. But this line is the fourth dimensional Tyler. These are the different choices you made throughout this cone of probability.
Okay, I've got a totally tangential question here. Can I ask?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So source, right? People talk about source. I think about Abraham. I think about Seth. I think about Jesus. I think about all the different, symbols and the way that we connect with our soul. And then there's when you're in alignment versus out of alignment. Could it be that the squiggles are out of alignment points that we feel, and sometimes we keep going and we go a little further, go a little more extreme before we course correct back to what our souls actually craving, what we actually want as far as expression in this journey of manifestation and expansion as a human, as a soul, as an entity. Like how do we contain or wrap our heads around that in relationship to the sphere in the cone?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, I've actually been thinking about that too. This idea of spirituality, metaphysics, you do hear this thing a lot about being in or out of alignment. Like, what the hell does that mean?
Right.
There's this concept that I read in this book about. Okay, so this goes back to the idea of your unique signature frequency, and it's a song. The song, honestly, it's another good way to use this analogy. Now, in music theory, we have this idea of major notes and minor notes, right? And in a very simplistic way of sometimes explaining to somebody who doesn't listen to or doesn't study music, the major notes are kind of the happier vibe notes, and the minor notes are kind of a bit more sad, you know? If a song is played all in minor notes, some cases, it can elicit this emotional response. So even though we don't fully understand why, we know that we all have emotions, and emotions are universal. Like everybody, doesn't matter where you are in the world or what culture you're born from, when you're happy, you smile.
Hmm.
And when you're sad, you frown. Emotions are understandable on kind of a base level, right? Like and through that, we yeah, it colors our experience. Now, how that applies to your own soul in your own life, how you make your choices being in and out of alignment. Let's say in this example, okay, this all goes back on the precept that you believe consciousness exists before you were born. Like if you believe that your consciousness existed before time and space, then there must have been a point in before time and space where you made a choice. Another idea in free will, or sorry, idea in spirituality is free will. There is always free will. Free will has always been there. People say, I was born against my free will. Well, yeah, on one level, that it seems like that. You don't have the memory, but you know, studying these spiritual texts, you know, once again, referencing like the channelers, the books, all that stuff, even having your own past life regression therapy, you can kind of get to a point where you realize, oh, wait a minute, there was a consciousness of me before I was born in this physical body. I think a lot of people spend their lifetime trying to ask or find out what that is. Like when people say, I want to know what my life's purpose is, it really is, I feel like it's to answer that question. What was my intent to even being incarnated in the first place? So your in terms of being in alignment, I believe that there's a point of consciousness that has an intention. And it's that intention that basically creates the series of events that allows us to be born and have experience. It's an intention. And the intention can be very simple or it can be very complex. And I think how you act in physical life being in or out of alignment, let's say a good, okay, so the intention for using you and RhinoDub once again, your
Thank you.
intention is to play your unique signature frequency to the best of your ability, RhinoDub. Your intention is to play out RhinoDub, to build it out, to make it this complex song that just really just makes you feel, compassionate, proud, happy. Like it's this. Seth uses this a lot too. This term called value fulfillment. There's some part of our emotional spectrum that we feel, man, this feels good. Like I can't explain. I just this feels right, right? It's the compass of the heart. It's a party that points
Yes.
north. So there is this quote unquote ideal way to play Rhino Dub, the way that it was always meant to be up to some level. However, as you go through your life and maybe you make some choices or you buy into or believe things that aren't true, but they're kind of fear-based, that can temporarily, put the song from major, which is in alignment, into the minor keys. Can you imagine a minor key version of Rhino Dub where it's kind of sad sounding? So it's still the
Uh,
same song. You don't lose like you can tell that it's Rhino Dub and that this is the Tyler song, but it's a sad version. And it doesn't feel right, but it's still
oh,
playing on. And you're choosing that. You're choosing to play the minor version at that moment. When you're choosing to be out of alignment or you're not following the compass of your heart, then like yeah, the song itself doesn't change, but the composition and the feeling of it does. It goes from major to minor. So that's maybe like a really rudimentary, small example of how I can maybe explain that.
that's amazing. That is amazing. That is amazing. What was coming up for me is so much of you're talking about intention, right? And so much of what is our intention? Why would we manifest in this physical body? Why would we incarnate, right? And I think about, yesterday was Easter,
Yeah.
and I think about the paradigm of Jesus and that representation, and so much that I experience in Christianity and the different iterations or understandings is that there is an afterlife from that perspective, but there's an origin point. And so it's interesting to hear this conversation in the context of multiple realities, the cone or the sphere, um, and how we each time through a reincarnational philosophy have a new beginning point. So
Mhm.
those actually it seems almost like Christianity could be a more narrowed perspective
Yes.
of a grander play of reincarnation. Because if you believe in afterlife, then how would you not believe in a prior life? If there's
It's a
continuity to
very good
this equation.
question. Yes. Yeah, if you dig into this, and you will because you're reading the Seth series, Seth references it too. Depending on what school of thought that you're from, some people believe that the Bible was edited at its very early conception, like after Jesus' death. The people that created the Catholic Church wanted to control the public opinion. I'm going to sound like I'm speaking as an authority, but this is just based off my own research and my own feelings. That the Catholic Church became what it was as a form of control, more or less, right? I feel like it's pretty obvious to see if you connect all the dots.
Right.
And
You need to get in touch with God through this person. It's
yes,
another entity that's got the ability to connect for you and interpret on your behalf.
yeah, it's taking advantage of human nature. At the very crux of who we are, like I said, like we're born with fear. Fear is what keeps us alive. It's what keeps us growing and developing. And the ultimate fear is death. It's the unknown. So if there's an institution that has control over that, then yeah, they can control your way of life, your way of thinking, your philosophy. But anyways, um, supposedly there's a school of thought that Jesus did talk about reincarnation. There are references that were in the Bible, but they were left out. There is this idea that there was a series of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Have you heard of them?
Mhm.
The Dead Sea Scrolls and some other texts that were written during the time of Jesus and captured some of his inputs that were kind of hidden away and kept in secret by this group called the Essenes. The Essenes were a group of followers close to Jesus that wanted to keep his teachings intact and knew that Jesus and his philosophy was under attack. Their ideology was under attack, and there's a lot of hostility towards them. So, in order to protect a lot of what Jesus was speaking about, there was this group called the Essenes that basically kept volumes of what he spoke about and sealed them away or kept them in safekeeping. Like a secret society in some shape or form kind of took place to protect that information. And believe it or not, Seth actually references that too. It's kind of interesting. He'll talk about it.
So
So,
then what is the significance of Jesus in this large play? Because again, if we all have this ability to be both human and God, and
mhm.
then if Jesus is referenced at this point in our history 2020 years ago approximately, when there was BC and there's AD, so
Yeah,
culturally massively significant in a three-dimensional time and space reality, but
yeah.
also talks about coming back, right? Was a Jew,
Mhm.
and so became like, what says that Jesus in the concept, like Seth actually breaks it down to say that Jesus was three separate humans
Yeah, three. Yeah, three
and then
physical incarnations.
consolidated into one idea.
Hmm.
And so help me to understand from your perspective, is the lean towards Jesus culturally, is there a reason behind that? Is there so much momentum? Could this be the most God human and or most God and most human thus far that's entered into carnation, that was able to speak with the most clarity, that had such conviction, was able to channel that God energy to do healing on the spot? I
Yeah.
mean, Joe Dispenza's workshops prove all this through science now too, through
Yes.
meditation, that we each and every one of us are able to get closer and closer to source, God energy, whatever you want to call it, by getting into alignment and having ultimate belief. So
Yeah.
that has so many implications and repercussions on how we go through each day. So what is, in your perspective, let's call it the relevancy or significance of Jesus through
Mm.
your own personal experience, what you've learned, how you've gathered, and what you've already shared with us?
Okay. Yeah. This is gonna be like a multi-layered answer.
Yes.
Because yeah. So um, some one book that's really changed my perspective on life and reality. It's been a while. I actually gave it to a friend years ago and he never returned it. But
It's good. He was
it's
meant to have it.
yeah. It's called the Mayan calendar. The Mayan calendar. It's the Mayan calendar. something. You know what? I'm gonna Google it because I think this is
Yeah, do you want a
important.
screen share?
Yeah, 1 second. I'm gonna pull up my browser. Oh, here we go. Let's see.
If
Book.
you believe in
Uh,
afterlife, how could you not believe in pre-life?
okay, I have it open right here. The Mayan Calendar and the Transformation of Consciousness by Carl Johann Kalman, PhD. So, to summarize this book, this dude spent his entire life studying ancient Mayan culture. Like he got his degree on. I'm not gonna butcher it. Let's see. It talks about the author, but anyways, he's in the book. He spent like over 20 years of his life down there in Guatemala, like studying the language, studying the symbols, everything with the Mayan. He was trying to understand the Mayan calendar as a whole. And why is the Mayan calendar even important? Well, the Mayan calendar is a snapshot of astronomy that has been so accurate that we have used it as reference for the past thousands of years or so. Um, the the ancient Mayans were so damn good at their celestial calculations, right? Like the way that stars would align and everything, like the way like their math and their astronomy was on point. Just like the Egyptians. The Egyptians are also known for just being absolute geniuses when it comes to preciseness of star measurements.
Mm.
And how this all factors in, he talks about how the Mayans broke down the idea of time. So in this book, he talks about, so, okay, this is weird. They have a different reference to time. I'll try to explain it the best I can based off my memory. So we have 12 months to a year, right? And that's our reference of time. And that is based off of one revolution around the sun. Well, the Mayans had a different way to measure time, and they called these segments of time baktuns. And there were 13 baktuns in one rotation. So have you ever seen a picture of the Mayan calendar?
How do you spell that? Baktuns?
Baktun. All right. I'm trying to look at a good picture. Something like that. I mean, we've all seen what it looks like, and you can pull it up on Google. It's this round shape. And
Describe what we're looking at, though, because I've seen this, but what does it actually mean? I mean, there's two faces that are looking at each other at the bottom. There's a face in the center. It looks like there's all sorts of different faces and animals. And
yeah,
is this where we get our star signs from?
yeah. I'm seeing if I can kind of count it or whatever. But it the calendar, the way that he basically described it is the calendar as a whole, it works in this spiral fashion. So it'll go through what I don't remember what his term that he used to describe it, but how 1 year to us is 12 months. One complete revolution in the Mayan calendar was 13 baktuns. There were 13 baktuns to one revolution. I don't know what consists of revolution, but what's fascinating is each of those baktuns, so one of the 13, was ruled by a deity or a god. The deity, the god, or the god of that baktun. And after one revolution, we'd go through the whole thing again with those same deities, those same gods, and each deity or each god had some type of deep, significant archetypal symbol about them. Like there was one god of war, of war and conquest and of violence. There was a god of harvest. There was a god of enlightenment. I'm gonna have to pull this up again sometime for you in the future to have some more precise references. But essentially, there were these different themes that each Baktun represented, that each god that ruled over that Baktun represented. And what he found is, according to the Mayan calendars, how they calculated it, every time a revolution completed, so all 13 Baktuns were experienced, time would actually shrink. So this is where it gets
Wait,
weird.
wait, wait, wait.
Yeah, this is
Each
where it gets,
Baktun has a deity, and then each rotation, is that what you call it?
each revolution or rotation, when it starts over again, the next 13 Baktuns that are to happen takes a shorter amount of time. The Mayan calendar, according to this dude, when he unraveled it, the Mayans actually did say that the universe started almost 13.8 billion years ago. Their calendar actually goes back that far. That's what makes this really trippy. Yeah. So what this guy did is he took the entire calendar that's been all woven in, and he basically like unraveled it. He like unrolled it like a giant roll of carpet. And then studying these Baktuns and their archetypal nature and how they might apply to our actual history line. He took human history as far back as we were able to measure it, and to the best of his ability, he matched our history to these Baktuns. And although this is only based off of his theory and his research, like we can't really prove that this is the case because the Mayans are all dead. There was like this almost near perfect match to major events in history next to that corresponding Baktun. So
Wow.
anytime there was, but this relates directly to an event that happened, Tyler, that changed human history and nature forever. So anytime there was the god of war and conquest, it would nearly perfectly align with an event in history where there was either a giant war or the sweeping of a tyrannical dictator or whatever. So Genghis Khan, Napoleon Bonaparte, Hitler, anytime these like crazy powerful individuals rise to power and cause this like violent push, it would almost align with like the god of war and death or something. Anytime there was a birth of a new religion, Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, it would align when the Baktun would shift to the god of enlightenment. Anytime there was a shift in, or there's like a new invention or something, or whatever, like these crazy events in human history that completely changed the way that our life would work, would near perfectly align with the shifting of these Baktuns and that theme. The theme would almost mirror. So not only are we all impressed by how accurate the Mayan calendar is in terms of its astronomy and its ability to calculate the positions of stars and everything, this guy was uncovering that the Mayans went one step further. They were mapping out that not only are we going through this we're going through these revolutions in the star system, but as we revolve around these star systems, it's affecting our quality of life in some way. It's almost like a giant clock of experience, like a pre-planned clock of experience. So
How much
the
does
way
this
that
factor into free will? How does this factor into some of the other elements that we've touched on? The point of origin, where
mm,
if here's your cone, and your cone could
that's
get into.
a very synchronous question, and this all, I promise, this all ties in. That's a very good question. So this is becoming a very dope conversation. So how does this factor into free will? Taking a look at this, so that was a perfect question to ask. You would think to yourselves, are we just slaves then? Are we just puppets to this preordained calendar of events, right? Like all these events are going to happen. Their themes, what they mean, are going to happen. Are we just all puppets to this play that's already been pre-planned? In a way, yes. In a way, yeah. If Hitler himself didn't do that, so okay, this is gonna, I can't say this with obvious certainty, but based off of the same topic that we're talking about, someone else maybe would have risen in his place. Someone else would have been a Genghis Khan. Someone else would have been, maybe instead of Jesus, there could have been Jesus. I don't know, like some of the very similar name, like a human or an avatar would have come up to enact this grand play, this cosmic play that's happening. Now, as you know, the Mayan calendar ended recently, 2012, 2011. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. Da, 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 da. And at the end of the book, he talks about this. He talks about the ending of the calendar and why this work is important to look at. And he basically states, looking at this and based off my research, one could say that there has been some invisible hand leading the story of what it means to be human. But now that the calendar is over, even though the Mayans were able to calculate the beginning of our physical universe from billions of years ago, and here it ends, what does this ending mean? He thinks it's graduation. We are no longer needing the parents. We don't need this invisible hand to help guide us on our course to becoming what we are. Jesus, as you know, there's been a lot of this symbology of Jesus and the fish and Pisces. Jesus was an archetypical representation of the age of Pisces. Now, what is the age of Pisces? Well, the zodiac age. The zodiac age is based off of, okay, let me find another picture here. Um, Milky Way, galaxy, zodiac diagram. Okay.
Are the Mayans the one that created all of these zodiac interpretations of our solar system?
Not necessarily. Well, they created their own version, their own interpretation of what this is, and
So
different
I
other
thought multiple cultures throughout the world, throughout different time periods, have had very similar
very similar.
representations.
Yeah, precisely. Very similar. Obviously, the star systems themselves don't change, but yeah, very similar.
Or they
Um,
change, but our point of awareness around them is so limited that, how many billions of light years does it take for some of these stars to actually become perceptible to us? Oh, and we have two new telescopes that should be going up to amplify our results of how we can perceive the universe in the next 5 years.
yes. Oh, yes. 26,000 years. Light years. Perseus. Okay. I'm trying to find a good combination of pictures to illustrate this. So I mean, for the most part, uh, you know that our little solar system is part of the Milky Way galaxy, and modern math. I mean, and this has been recently proved, but at the center of our galaxy is a supermassive black hole. And the supermassive black hole is this giant, well, yeah, it's a supermassive black hole, but its gravity and its pull is what's keeping our galaxy together. And so here's a snapshot of that might work. Imagine this is like the center of the galaxy, and we're kind of somewhere out here. Our solar system does revolve around the supermassive black hole. So just like how our planet Earth goes around the sun, our solar system is going around the center of the galaxy. And I'm gonna speak to it as though I do know this, it's been a while since I've touched on this. I could be wrong. Some measurement. I don't know if it's a full. I think it's a full rotation, a full revolution around the center of our galaxy would be an entire zodiac age, whatever, zodiac age, right? So if we were to divide this whole structure into 12 parts, like we supposedly just ended our journey through the age of Pisces, and now you've heard like, oh, we're merging into the age of Aquarius. It's a new age. Well, that's because if we divide, like, this whole rotation, I think was roughly 26,000 years, ish. Yeah, it's like 12 and a half, or 12,500 years is almost roughly one half of the zodiac age, and we have just passed this threshold. We have pretty much completed one whole rotation from the last Aquarius age. So, Pisces is known as the 12th house. Pisces is known as the last of the zodiac. It's like December of our calendar. So we're basically starting a whole new zodiac age. The age of Aquarius is like going back to one after we just finished the whole course, going back to number one. So, like this being a multi-layered answer, Jesus represents a theme. Jesus represents a theme of this whole past age. And if we're going back to this idea, if we're basing this whole off the idea of what the Mayan calendar we're trying to illustrate, like, look, there's some type of invisible hand that's leading these events. There's this kind of pre-written play leading us through. Going back to your question of like, well, what does Jesus represent? Jesus represents sort of a graduation, I think, of human nature and the human species. Like Christ, at the very turn of the age of Pisces, when we were leaving the last zodiac age, according to, I think Seth speaks about this later, but Christ and the Christ consciousness was basically the answer to a question. The answer to the question of where do we go now as a species? Like what is our best form? And Christ was a manifestation of, at that time, the mass unconsciousness of humanity needed a reminder of what they really were and what they could be. And Christ simply manifested as an answer, like, oh, you guys aren't just a bunch of hairless apes that are going to be murdering, killing, and stealing from each other. Like, you guys, like, it doesn't have to be just survival and just this grittiness. Reality doesn't have to be this harsh. Have you forgotten? Know not that ye are gods. He's just there as like, yo, I'm just here as a wake up. I'm just here as a reminder. Like Christ manifested as this perfect embodiment of a human being that had zero memory loss of what it was, which was just pure awareness, pure consciousness.
Zero
That's
memory
based on
loss of their own lifetime or of the infinite consciousness?
like zero. Well, I mean, I guess that's very presumptuous, but for my own interpretation, zero memory loss. Like I believe Jesus had to live his own human life, but to a certain point, I think he unlocked all of his memories of like, oh, wait a minute, I remember all my incarnations. I remember how the nature of reality works. Like he had so much memory unlocked that he was able to manifest, take two fish and multiply it into enough to feed people. Like that's not magic. People say, oh, it's a miracle, it's godlike power. Or maybe he just remembered how to do something that we all used to be able to do at one point in time, or something like that. Like he knew, not like maybe not knew, but just remembered how reality works. It's like Neo in the Matrix. Like all of a sudden, oh shit, this isn't like black and white reality. This is a simulation, and I can just hack my brain to just download kung fu. Jesus could just like, oh yeah, this is a simulation. I can just like copy and paste all this fish. Um, and he kind of set the stage of, it's like almost like the Zodiac Age was the ending of the play, started the play. Jesus is like, this is what you're all going to end up becoming, but we're going to start this 2000 story arc. The entire age of Pisces, we're going to start with the ending in a way of just like, all right, this is what you can be, and this is what you're going to work towards. Here we go. And then he disappears. And the last 2,000 years have been us trying to recreate, unscramble, and figure out exactly what the hell he was talking about. And I believe, this is my own personal belief, that the age of Aquarius is where, once again, the mind calendar ending, all this stuff, the invisible hand is lifted. We're all on our own. And I think our ability to reach that point of Christ consciousness is totally up to us now. And it is plausible.
How does that play into, wow, like this is big. This is a lot to wrap the consciousness around.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you.
And to kind of touch back on like the idea of free will, like you said, as we were talking about, there is a part of us that exists outside of physical reality that still must on some level be able to make choices. Well, if you take a look at what the human being is and what it's capable of, you can't just magically make a human from some like weird hominid creature into this enlightened being that can manifest infinite fish out of thin air. There has to be a linear story. There has to be a linear series of dots that all connect on some level. That there just has to be. So
That
on
feels
one,
fourth dimensional.
yeah. So on one snapshot, maybe our fourth or fifth dimensional selves were like, okay, we want to experience what it's like for a monkey-like species that throws their own shit to be evolved into almost demigods. What does that story look like? Well, we can't. Well, we're gonna need some help. We're gonna need some help, and that help is this play that we've created for ourselves, a storyline. There, in the entire zodiac age, where each age has its own theme, where each of the Baktuns in the mind calendar has its own energy of influence. There's these energies that push us and make us force us to grow and change and adapt and evolve to this point where like we see like the nature of reality, at least in our reality, is fractal, right? You have the golden mean ratio. Like if you look at almost anything in nature, it has a fractal nature about it. How does that affect, like how does that look for us? Well, we're based off of this parental fracture. You are one fractal layer of your parents expressed through DNA. Well, what if we were to blow that up on a cosmic scale? Well, we can maybe hypothesize that just as that we have human parents, maybe we have this cosmic parent. And this cosmic parent, just like how we kind of go through school, this cosmic parent is laying out this quote unquote school for us to go through, in a sense. Where once again, we can't just be these like hominids that barely discovered fire and could all of a sudden manifest things like Jesus can without first earning our chops, understanding, like through experience, really appreciating and understanding the nature of reality. Only then can you fully like utilize all of it. Going all the way back to like the expressions of the soul, how Michael Newton talks about how in the beginning, when a brand new quote unquote soul spins off from the source, it's like this innocent, naive white light. It's consciousness. It's a part of the whole, but it's brand new. It's got nothing to it. Well, you push it into physical reality. It gets colored through all these experiences. It gets to gain things. It's adapting. It's changing all that stuff. But eventually, what it's really doing is it's integrating. It's taking everything of what it could be and is integrating and making into one whole picture. It eventually goes from that white light into that gold light that contains, from its whole experience of incarnations, it contains all the pieces that it needed, that it had to collect on its own to become that gold light. It had to start off from that 8-bit Rhino Dub simple song into the masterpiece Rhino Dub that has a full orchestra and DJ remix to it.
Love it. So I read a book called Sacred Contracts by Carolyn Mize. Have you heard of it?
Maybe. I'm going to look it up right now.
Okay, so part of what she talks about is that we are fragments of our soul and that they're contracts. So in the same sense as what you're describing as school, some of us are predestined to be, she's got like 74 archetypes or 76, something like that. And so we're predestined to these various roles, but there's kind of a defining role for each person. And so some of us are teachers, right? Some of us are students. Some of us are, here you go.
Mystic examines the lives of spiritual master, prophets. Those archetypal journeys illustrate the 4 stages of sacred contract and provide clues for discovering your own. Yeah.
Do you want to just read this out loud real quick?
Sure. Yeah, Mize examines the lives of the spiritual masters and prophets, Abraham, Jesus, Buddha, and Muhammad, whose archetypal journeys illustrate the 4 stages of a sacred contract and provide clues for discovering your own. Mize, is that how you pronounce your name? Mize explains how you can identify your particular spiritual energies or archetypes, the gatekeepers of your higher purpose, and use them to help you find out what you are here on earth to learn and whom you are meant to meet. Exploring your sacred contract will shine a light on the purpose and meaning of your life. You're meant to do certain tasks, and you're meant to have certain relationships. And I at this point in my journey, I fully believe that. It's a concept that it's in this weird thing where like the debate between free will and predestined stuff, it's ongoing. And I'm just going to assume that anyone who does listen to this is someone who's already on the spiritual path. I'm not going to try to convince a skeptic that yes, this is indeed true or whatever. You kind of have to get to that point on your own. But this idea of you are meant to do something, that kind of ties back to our conversation of intention. What some level of you, some 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th dimensional version of you had an intention to create us, to create this fragment of the soul for a reason. And going back to the other point of, well, that intent is to play a song, to play our signature frequency. But how well are we going to play that frequency? Is it going to be in major keys or is it going to be in minor keys? Is it going to be in alignment or out of alignment? Some people never, and it's meant to be maybe in some cases, but some incarnations, they never even get to play the whole song. That's important too. That's part of it.
How does that play out as far as completeness?
That's a really good question.
Because you were just bringing up that a fresh soul, and what came up for me when you described that as being pure, positive, white light, naive. Well, how is it that a soul spins out? Are souls strictly related to us in our human experience? Are they related to other animals, other life forms, like other manifestations on other planets?
That's a good question. I made this in Photoshop a long time ago. I think I'm gonna kind of revamp this, but I'd like to maybe bring this back into life in a way. This whole idea of us talking, disseminating knowledge. I thought of this back when I was 20, neo-modus gnosis, which in layman terms mean new method knowledge. And I have this tree in the background, kind of symbolizing like the tree of life. You'll read about in the Seth books too, like the idea and the concept of the tree. It's it is the grand archetype of consciousness and life in general. So I don't know. I was trying to take all these different themes and make my own thing, but perhaps I'll revisit this. I'll polish it up a bit and maybe go from there. So maybe be on the lookout for neo-Modicinosis, the reincarnation of my old idea. We'll
You know,
see.
as I'm looking at this right here, this seems like a great backdrop for like the YouTube thumbnail, right? So
Mm,
superimpose your face on here or our faces, depending on the style or the vibe, something like that. But this this is stuff that you've been thinking about, ruminating on, and your spirit, your soul has been in touch with for who
yeah,
knows how long in three-dimensional terms.
I appreciate that, man. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Are you kidding? This is great.
It really is, honestly. It makes me feel like my initial impulses 10 years ago were right. Like this powerful synchronicity, like this and our conversation, it means a lot to me, man. I really appreciate this. This is dope,
Amen.
honestly.
It's amazing
Feels
that you
good to the
mentioned
soul.
that because yesterday my mom just shared with me something I wrote 10 years ago. It was a note to my family and it meant
Oh,
a ton to her. It was about gratitude and appreciation. I went through a really, really challenging time and I was just
mm,
leaning into how incredible our family is and wanting to make sure I acknowledged everybody. And so I CC'd our whole family on an email thread. The block's almost as big as the actual text. And I mean, she just brought that up. So isn't that amazing? You talk about this synchronicity, as Deepak calls it, synchrodestiny. And, you know, both of us just had a reincarnation of our 10-year ago selves, you with this piece of art and so much more, me with that piece of gratitude and that note towards family and appreciation. So
yes.
thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, the idea of, we were talking earlier about cycles, like how the Mayan calendar has 13 baktuns, our calendar has 12 months, the zodiac age has 12 ages. Well, for the human life, and like if you ever look up numerology, we go through cycles and numbers of like 9, almost 10. It's strange. I don't know if you looked into numerology at all, but
Mm-mm.
it's a fascinating topic in itself. I want to do some more research, maybe do a video on that. But yeah, like we go through cycles ourselves in almost nearly 10 years. So yeah, very apropos.
Is this why? Because what is the significance with math being a universal language? Math being that you know like the metric system, right? If there's
Hmm.
another zero, you call it something different.
Yeah.
Like it makes so much sense, and yet American Standard is like full of fractions and all these, you know, uh, odd representations to me that don't seem to follow a simple format. So with the metric system in numerology, you said cycles tend to be about 10 years, tend to be about a decade.
In a way, yeah. This gets really heady, but um, it's so okay. In our universe, in our reality, in our timeline, we can, for some reason, we have developed a system of the number 1 through 9 up until 10 until it resets. And it's a chicken and the egg question. Like, was math always there and we discovered it, or did we kind of create math and our interpretation is how it needs to be accurate? It's really strange. I don't really know. I can't really comment. In regards to like our measurement systems, yeah, like the metric system just obviously makes sense. Like it's just intuitive. I think Americans have just been stubborn and archaic. We just haven't really, we just refuse to kind of update. Yeah, I don't believe the American system that, like makes as much sense. But like we can take an object and we say, okay, there's one object, and now there's more than one. There's two objects. So we can kind of create this counting system. But why we decided 10, I'm not sure. 10 is stuck. Interestingly enough, different cultures did have different stopping points. I remember reading one culture where they go up into like increments of 13 or something.
Hmm.
So I don't know. It gets really theoretical and grand if we start exploring out of it. But um, yeah, sorry. I guess like spiritually though, we just tend to use 9. You know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then it resets. In numerology, that's the case at least. Everything kind of resets back to this base. Like 9 is as far as it goes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 goes back to 1. It just resets.
So before we took our break,
Yeah,
we
previous
were
question.
we were on the true nature of reality, white
Mhm.
light going to gold light, and how we're all fragments, right? It goes back to
Yes.
that initial intention. And
Mhm.
then Mother Nature was calling. So, do you remember the direction that you wanted to take that, or do you have a direction that you would like to take that?
Um, yeah, sort of. I remember a fragment of what you had asked before we took the break, where I made a comment about how like one intention could be a lifetime of pain and limitation and darkness, and that is intentional. That in itself is intentional. And I so the spiritual community, like the spirituality as a whole, and the spiritual community, there's obviously like many various sects and belief systems about it. You know, being based out of Portland, Portland has this joke about how it's just way too many white lighters. And I was like, what does that even mean? I asked a friend, like white lighters, they only focus on the positive. They only focus on the white light. You know, like my, like I'm very spiritual and I'm high vibrational because I'm always focused on this and da 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 da. And for some people and for some individuals, and I've actually witnessed this being in Portland too, in some communities, it's very narrowly focused where it's like, you just want to stay in the positive. And that makes sense. I understand why. Like we as life as a whole is engineered to strive for positivity in the sense of like pleasure, right? There's it, like here's an interesting thought, and this is both observable and provable even by science, is that all life has one one measure, or like one motivational factor, and that's the pleasure and pain principle.
Mm.
In terms of a spectrum of experience, we experience pleasure and pain. Humans, animals, even plants and fungi can experience pleasure and pain. Like we've able to experience, like plants can demonstrate stress, and plants can demonstrate, you know, that they're thriving. Um, we will always like that I like it makes sense why would anybody consciously want to choose living in pain all the time? Like that's completely illogical, right? Like why would anybody consciously choose to live in pain? Yet many people do. That's a whole other set of questions. I and going back, how does this tie back into like our intention and our incarnational stuff or whatever? And the reason why I brought the whole white light. So I'm going to use another Mayan picture here. I'm going to stop sharing this and open this up in my window again. My very, very first ayahuasca experience, I saw this very clearly in my mind. See the Mayan butterfly. Okay. It's this symbol. I'm going to share my screen again. The Mayan butterfly.
Hmm.
And the Mayans use this symbol, the Mayan butterfly, as kind of a archetypal symbol of existence, of God, in a sense. The galactic butterfly. It's the galactic creator. And if you look at it in detail, like it's this very beautiful yet perfectly symmetrical balance of dark and light.
Hmm.
Perfectly symmetrical. Like you see this white, you see this black, and all as a whole, it's together. So even though we want to just be in the white, because let's be very simple about this, and let's just say, okay, white represents positive and good and pleasure. Black represents pain, discomfort, being out of alignment, right? Being unharmonious. Very, very cliche statement. You can't have the light without the dark. Well, duh, right? We need this contrast in order to have a whole. There's this idea that's been floating around about trying to bridge the gap between science and spirituality called 0 point theory. 0 point is this idea where, like, if our consciousness is just a point of energy, right in the center, that would be 0 point, and 0 point is where white and black, pain and pleasure, darkness and light, it's all homeostasis, it's all one. And just like a guitar string at rest, it's not like when a guitar string is at rest and it's not vibrating, there's nothing, right? But as soon as you pluck that string and it's going up and down, it creates this shape, and that shape is its reality, its consciousness, its existence. And if you look at a two-dimensional layout of a graph, or a two-dimensional layout of I'll just pull it up. Let's see. Sound wave. Not the transformer. Yeah, so it has these ups and downs, right? The ups are known as peaks and the downs are known as valleys, or like peaks and troughs. Let's say this flat line is 0 point. This is all like light, this is all dark, and then all as a whole picture, it makes up existence. So how I've interpreted this and how this is played out in my own life is, in order to have the complete picture of the human experience, in order to have this as a whole snapshot for you to understand and comprehend fully in your mind, heart, body, and soul, you have to have the whole picture. You have to have the whole gamut. Let's actually imagine that this one symbol represents the human experience. But we were to break this down to a pie graph, take little snapshots. You'll notice that some snapshots have way more white than black, and some snapshots have way more black than white. And going back to that really just simplistic idea that white represents positive and good, and black represents darkness and pain, you got to have both to have the whole picture. What if each little snapshot might have been an incarnation? Like, let's say this snapshot right here has like a lot of white and very little black. Maybe that incarnation, you chose to be a spiritual or religious person who just lived from the heart, was very connected to your soul, and spent a whole lifetime, doing good stuff and being in connection, like you were really aligned. You were in alignment. You were listening to your heart compass. Well, and then you have this lifetime where even though you're like submerged into all this white, like you are totally out of alignment. You're experiencing a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort, and it's a hard lifetime. You have to have all of it. You have to have all those lifetimes all together in order to have this entire snapshot of, oh, okay, this is what the human experience is. So yeah, it just makes sense. We all have lifetimes that have the intention of, I'm going to go into this lifetime and I'm going to be very selfish. I'm going to cause a lot of pain. Someone had to be Hitler. Someone had to be Genghis Khan. Someone had to be these tyrants that cause a lot of pain. And what a gift. What a gift in the sense of, they've shown us a way of human life that experientially might have been very difficult, but because it had been had and it exists, we can then use it as reference of, okay, we don't need to do that ever again, in a sense, the process is the point. The experience is what matters the most, because like being in the present, having that, experiencing those emotions of like, oh, this is really difficult, this is challenging, this really hurts. That's what makes, man, I just sound like some cliche person, but that's what makes life and existence worth it, really. So going back to that question of like the white light versus the gold light. Well, when you're going through these different incarnations and you're integrating, it's all about integration. At some point in maybe our spiritual mastery, and I've been sort of figuring this out for myself, or I've been trying to apply it to myself in the best way possible, is integration. Bashar talks about the point of life is not just to escalate your vibration to this high degree and only be positive and white. No, the point of life is to integrate, to take all the quote unquote bad, the perceived bad, the darkness, and to integrate, not to separate. To be able to consciously go through your pain, to consciously accept your darkness, to consciously fully embrace your totality, which is a perfect balance of white and dark, of light and darkness, of pleasure and pain, to consciously integrate the whole picture. That's when you're able to achieve the snapshot and get your personal unique perspective of what your human experience, aka your godhood, looks like. So all the incarnations through intention, your soul can see this, and your soul maps out, okay, like through free will on that higher level. All right, I want this picture, and in order to get this picture, I'm going to have to dissect it into different lifetimes with these different compositions of light and dark. And even though the incarnations themselves may not understand, which they're not supposed to, not understand why the hell this is happening to them, collectively as a whole, when the incarnations all align and they each bring their piece of the puzzle back, we can then create this picture, and then we can then graduate from this experience.
Woo! Wow. Okay, so there's so much that's coming up for me here. Your description makes a ton of sense.
Really? Okay. Thanks, man.
Yeah, of course. I'm looking at this galactic butterfly, and it's just fascinating to me, because that's exactly it, right? The spiritual path is to be able to have a step one experience, as Abraham calls it, a point of contrast, a point of dark, right? Being able to find that harmony, finding that joy. And so step four is being really good. Okay, so step one is you experience the contrast. Step two is you're aware of it. Step three is you do something about it, right? So step two is you're kind of dipping into it. So
Yeah.
step three, you feel better. And then you're just focusing on the best intention. You're focusing on the best learning, right? Because we have pain until we learn. That's when the pain goes away, when we've actually integrated that lesson into our consciousness. Wow, thank you for that. And so step four is being really good at finding that harmony consistently. Step five is when you can go through the contrast, you go through the step one, and yet you don't lose sight of the whole process. You're so integrated that you can experience, even in the moment. We always experience the contrast, but the amount of time that you actually stay there, the representation, how it shows up as something that's integrated, positive. Maybe it's not even positive, right? But in my framing, I tend to look at it that way. I like to think about things as
always positive.
Yeah, because I believe that all learning is positive, because positivity is just direction that's in alignment with a higher good, right? So somebody feels better from their learning. Just like you brought up, the greatest example is you brought up things like Hitler, like Genghis Khan, or Genghis, however you pronounce his name. I mean, theoretically, he killed more than any other, human that we know of on record. But yet, you look at viruses, and go back 100 years, and it's known as the Spanish flu, took out somewhere between 50 to 60 million people, if my data is accurate. And as a portion of our society at that point, I think there was about 200 million total on the planet. So that was much greater in impact than even one human was. But to find that reason not to repeat something that could be so dark, right? Something that is so painful, isn't that the essence of wisdom?
Yeah, more or less, definitely. Wisdom is being able to. There's a good definition of wisdom that I read once upon a time. Of course, I'm going to butcher it, but yeah, no, I really liked what you said. Wisdom, I guess, would be having the whole experience and then being able to honor that experience consciously, moving from that point forward.
Wisdom, having the whole experience and honoring that consciously moving forward.
Like a really good example, and this has been a theme in my ayahuasca journeys that all combined. The point of this wisdom is there's this idea, in this three-dimensional reality where there's limitation. There's this whole idea of, and it exists around us. There is this idea of limitation in the sense of, like, we have to eat to survive. Resources are finite in a sense, and it's the idea of consumption, right? This whole idea of taking a part of something in order to sustain yourself. Because that's one of the base formulations of this reality. Like, let's go back to the idea that Earth is a simulation, right? That life is a simulation, and in the simulation, you can make these rules that last the entire simulation. One is, if you don't eat, you die. You have to consume. You have to eat plants, you have to eat animals. So you have to eat other living things in order to sustain yourself. You can't just eat one meal and be good the rest of your life. If only, that'd be dope, but not in this reality. So once again, this whole idea of pain and pleasure and how all life, all consciousness goes to these precepts. Do you think a plant feels pleasure when it's being picked by you? No. There honestly, like we've science has even shown that when bugs start eating leaves on a tree, it lets off these pheromones to its other neighbor trees saying, "Help, I'm distressed. You guys should amp up your natural pesticides." Right? Like
Wow.
trees are communicating. Yeah. Like even though we don't express it in language we understand, and this is going to like maybe piss vegans off, but plants experience pain and stress to some degree. Animals obviously do. So when you're eating something, you are taking away that entity's ability to continue its life. So it's a sacrifice. The whole idea of like prayer and honor, that all came because it's like, oh shit, you are ending your life, plant, fungus, animal, so that I can continue to sustain mine. Um,
Mm.
so a good example of this wisdom would be having the experience viscerally of both sides of the coin, being the perpetrator, being the victim. And this all ties into karma. So how does wisdom tie in? Like my interpretation of wisdom and spirituality is wisdom is fully experiencing all sides of the coin and then being able to once it like honor that whole picture. So through my ayahuasca experiences, I felt there were times where I would experience intense pleasure and power, and I was just like on cloud nine, but it wasn't a natural pleasure or surge of power, meaning I was experiencing energies of my past lifetimes where I was I was living the law of the land of dog eat dog, survival of the fittest. I'd be this powerful person that was like raping and pillaging others and just taking all this good, even though I was experiencing all this good and I was cut off and unaware of the pain that I was causing others. I would experience a period of that. And then I would experience the complete opposite. I would experience being raped, being pillaged, having things just taken from me and experience that deep sorrow. So at the end of that journey, at the end of experiencing like, okay, I know what pure pain and despondency feels like. I understand what pure pleasure and power feels like, and I understand the relationship and how they're in balance. My wisdom is I'm going to stay neutral. They both exist. I honor them both. And because of how the nature of reality works, I can use my free will to be neutral and honor both sides but not participate. That's one level of ending.
How is that joyous? How is that?
Okay, that's a great question. Okay, if we look at the concept of pleasure, we framing this in a spiritual sense, when we think of pleasure, we can easily name very base level concepts of it. Eating delicious food, having amazing sex, getting a massage, very physical, very tangible. There's a biochemical reaction to it, right? But there are other ways to get pleasure. Okay, here's one system that I still to this day believe is like this dude Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This guy nailed it. He tapped into the archetype of human nature and he nailed it. So there are these levels of pleasure that we can achieve, right? So physiological, breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, excretion. Shitting can feel really good. It's all physiological. And based on where you are at in terms of like your living circumstances, your belief systems, your emotional, mental well-being, all that jazz, there are these layers to it. When you on a conscious level use your free will to decide this is good, you know, like I can eat broccoli and be like, man, this is good. My subjective power as a point of creation can deem this broccoli as delicious. I give you that same broccoli with that same charge. You fucking hate broccoli. You eat this like, man, this is terrible. This is torture. This is pain. So there's a level of free will that's involved in all this, but then there are layers of this. Like, so yeah, after you pass the physiological, let's say you have all your physical needs met. Human nature, what's interesting about human nature is you've heard this concept of novelty, right?
Mhm.
Like you can't eat your favorite food every day, Tyler, and not get sick of it. That's just a bummer, but it's the nature of reality.
Right.
When you get exposed to the same things, whether it's sex, drugs, food, physiologically, if you get a surplus of it, you'll eventually get sick of it. And the soul, this comes back into like the nature of the soul and how that kind of ties into free will. Your soul's like, all right, I want a different layer of pleasure. You eventually you move up to safety, eventually move up into like sociological and psychological needs. So okay, all your base needs are met. You feel safe. You're working out. You're eating healthy. That's all met. You could still be depressed. Well, maybe because your heart wants some friendships. Maybe your family relationships need improvement. Like these people that are in your lives, you want a good relationship with them, and you can sense on your heart, not just on your heart and your empathetic level, but subconsciously, we're constantly gauging to those reactions. Like we have some ability to have empathy and to kind of vibe off each other and say, okay, I have a good rapport with this person. I respect this person. I like this person. You as a good example, Tyler. I really respect and appreciate you as a person. So if I make
Likewise.
choices, appreciate that. And if I make choices that are out of alignment, that might disappoint me or make you sad, that's going to affect my feelings of a friendship and family and being belonging with regards to you. So even beyond that, there's this level of esteem, self-esteem, confidence, achievement. So let's say you get to the point where you're really good socially, you're treating your family right, you're treating your friends right, and it's a genuine connection. And then you're going along your life, you're just living your life, but then every day it's just like that. Every day, you know that you have a good vibe, that there's no new challenges or anything. Human nature, novelty, you're going to get bored. It does start getting to this point where, okay, you know what? I want something a bit more. I want some type of personal achievement. It's like maybe I will start my own business. Maybe I'll write a book. Maybe I'll do a painting. Maybe I'll start a club for like kids that are poor and I want to help displaced kids or something. You want to do something that's a bit more tangible to your soul. And once you get past the point of that, you get to this it does keep going up. So self-actualization, morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem solving. Now you're getting to a point to where you are just really in the present. You are really in the moment. All of this stuff is already in alignment. You're taking care of it, but now you're just spontaneously getting to this point. So this gets to my own personal belief, my own personal interpretation. But if you are working through all these needs, which on some level can be aligning your chakras, right? You're doing everything that you can on the physical level. Once you get past the physical level, there's this sense of channeling your soul, where you're channeling Rhino Dub with and you as a channeling Rhino Dub, the radio antenna is perfectly straight out. There's no rust. The antenna's not bent. Like imagine you've seen those like old school radio antennas, right? That pull out and
Hmm.
elongate, and they're like sectional. Like here, my camera. This is a good point, right? Here's a camera stand, but it's sectional. Now, in order for me to tune into Rhino Dub, the radio station, and to hear that song perfectly and clearly and crisp on the radio, this has to be fully extended. But in order for this antenna to be fully extended to tap into that frequency, every part of this antenna, this bottom piece is the physiological, breathing, food, water, and sex. This has to be in balance. This has to be in harmony. And we have to consciously recognize that this is in harmony. Then the next level, safety. We have to feel secure and safe in being in physical reality. And then our love and belonging, our social, psychological, intimacy, self-esteem, creativity, self-actualization. There are levels to this. And once you're able to, with complete sincerity and your heart compass, say to yourself, yes, everything is in alignment, all of a sudden the antenna is extended and you can tap into the most pristine ideal version of Rhino Dub, and you're exemplifying it, you're channeling it, and you are it. That's but and how this ties back to your question of neutrality. When you're perfectly neutral, meaning you understand the wisdom of creation for its spectrum, the black and the white, the dark and the light, the negative and the positive. When you're able to stay neutral, you're not creating any more karma, or another way to word it, you're not creating a surplus or a lack in what this is. You're able to consciously stay in the center and have everything in balance to tap into your highest version of Rhino Dub.
Is this why the pyramids were what was resurrected by the Egyptians? Everything
Hmm.
coming to a point.
Oh man, that honestly, that gets into some completely other territory. There's a
Is
lot
that
of
is that a whole nother episode?
pyramids by itself is a whole other episode.
Yes.
There's some crazy shit
Can we
about
do
pyramids.
pyramids next time?
Research. I'll brush up
Yes.
on my. There's some bizarre stuff about pyramids, but yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so wow.
Awesome.
Closing thoughts. How do you wrap up this 2 hours of
Jeez, really? Two
journey
hours?
of the
Wow.
soul? Yeah, pages,
Oh.
pages. Oh my goodness.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, like I really appreciate you doing this. I didn't know. I honestly didn't know what you had in store for me. But I feel like on some level, Tyler, you were kind of helping me prime myself to go into this direction, right? I didn't expect the types of questions that you were going to ask, but I was able to give some interesting answers. And yeah, it's sparked something in me, and now I want to get more refined. I want to brush up on this. I want to have sources. I want to have more something a bit more tangential. But for those that are listening, I would end with please, please, please do your own research. Like I really hope
Mm,
you spark some curiosity. None of what I said is necessarily true. It's my own version of truth, and it pertains to me. And I hope you're able to find your own version of truth, because there's infinite versions. You just got to find your own. You got to find your own clearest version of Rhino Dub, whatever that may be.
Shout out to the motet. Oh my goodness, what an incredible song. So if there's
Oh
any
yeah,
track that we could have in the background, we need to figure out how to get Rhino Dub to be the backbeat on the
yeah.
running the whole time. Be like, what is the royalty? We need this.
It's worth it.
Yes. Amen, brother. I appreciate you coming on so much. Like this is stuff that I imagine is really frequently thought about, but oftentimes not discussed because I imagine there's a lot of charge within different people where, say, maybe their
Yeah,
family isn't as open to different perspectives. This is the way it is, right? You fit into my box, my blueprint, or you don't. And so that can be frustrating as somebody is, as a soul being an infinitely curious, um, question asking answering process, right? This game of infinity that we live in, and yet we have these tangible finite experiences. We have five senses, but yet, how often do we actually think about, like, wow, when I do this, I feel stuff. How does that actually
yeah.
happen? Like, I have dexterity, I have limbs. Like, what a gift. Oh my goodness. I just saw, this guy, Nick, I think it's Vucevic,
Hmm.
and he was born without basically any limbs. He's got, like,
Wow.
yeah, very little. And Kyle Maynard, he actually has a very similar kind of scenario where he's basically has elbows. And Kyle Maynard, he climbed Mount Kilimanjaro on his bare hands. Yeah, and like
Damn.
yeah, there's another guy, Sean Stevenson, who actually he passed away just like a year or two ago. But he's known as the 4-foot giant. No, I'm sorry. That was actually Kyle Maynard. My apologies. But all these people are coming up for me because this lens of appreciation. You talked about the contrast. The contrast is there for a reason. And when I look at the blessings that I have, just being able-bodied, having full, physical representations, I'm going to go hop on my mountain bike after this and go for a couple miles. I don't know. We'll see how far we go, but like, what? We just get to do this. The sun is shining. I didn't tell it to. It just decided to show up again, or we decided to observe it. But some people don't have eyes. They don't have that perception, but then other senses grow. Animals have so many other perceptions than us. I mean, if a dog can sense 15,000 times more information in the water, a shark can smell blood miles away. It has like these pulses of energy that give it readings of what's in the water, what's around it, so far away. Whales can have songs that communicate for, I think hundreds of miles.
It's
Like,
insane.
yeah, and to think that if all that life is what we see, touch, taste, smell, and hear.
We're missing the point.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Shit's
So
wild, man.
thank you so much for diving
Thank
in
you
this
so
this
much.
journey. Thank you for all of your experiences that have consolidated and wrapped to where we got a glimpse of your present day fourth dimensional reality. We got to experience the tangents. We got to experience that snake looking thing as you described, which is also similar to harmonics, right? And vibration, there's always the ups and downs. And that contrast is key, right? We can't experience more on one side than we experienced on the other. The pain, I believe, gives us the direct proportion to be able to experience more of the joy, right? Some
Yes.
people live very muted lives, and not like that's bad, but that was why my question came up around a muted life versus a wisdom filled, a wise life, right? What is the distinction? Because if you're constantly neutral, then are you experiencing the full breadth of what life has to offer?
Mm,
Or if you're constantly neutral, are you just flatline, which is also the same thing that happens when we're dead?
yes. That's a very good way to put it. I didn't factor that in. That's a very good point. Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah. I think, once again, going back to the idea of intention and stuff, I think our soul intends us to have an experience where we can't be neutral for a while. Like I think every life that's ever born on this earth is thrust into extreme contrast. And I think some lifetimes they either end up perfectly, they end up more on the white side versus the dark side. But when I said that, when I made that statement about neutrality, I guess I was coming from the perspective of, let's say you reach a point at the very end of your incarnations. Let's say you reach a point where you are able to tap into all of your other parallel reality selves, filter in all of their experiences, both good and bad, and then you get to this point of completion. I personally believe, I feel it, and what I think is like, we're not going to be on Earth as humans forever. Like I don't see this happening forever, never, never, never. I think the human experience will end, and for some of us, supposedly the Mayan calendar and its ending does kind of mark the graduation of, I think, a lot of incarnations on Earth. I think there's going to be a mass exodus of people, and that mass exodus comes from just completion. They reach neutrality on their own, and they appreciate both the light and the dark of what the human experience is. Complete integration.
And what is after integration?
The next level, whatever the hell that is.
It's just a restart of the same game, different different
I
chess
don't
pieces.
I don't think so, man. I have this weird feeling that maybe we incarnate on a totally different planet with a totally different rules. But we have our playbook. We have the Earth playbook as a tool. Maybe we're presented a new set of challenges that we needed the Earth rule book, our notes, to survive. Maybe.
This is
I
why
know
we
that you
call it Earth
listen.
School, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Like one thing that I love about Abraham and Bashar and these other channels, they reference a lot that Earth and the human experience is one of the most difficult in existential reality.
Hmm.
Earth is a graduate level school. Earth is very fucking challenging. It's a lot of darkness, a lot of limitations. So if you can graduate Earth school, um, we I think we'll go where we're needed. We might go somewhere else that needs our wealth of wisdom that we collected from living this challenging experience.
Who was the other person you said? Abraham and who?
Ooh, Bashar. Oh man.
Who's that? How
Bashar
do we
has
spell
been
it?
Bashar. Now, Bashar's very left field. I'm going to give you a warning, and this part you can leave on or cut out. I don't know. Bashar has been my primary mentor for the past 10 years, honestly.
Whoa.
After Seth, I moved on to Bashar. Um, not the Seth series is super solid. Bashar basically expounds on Seth, and Bashar is actually an extraterrestrial consciousness 1,000 years in our future.
1,000 years?
In our future, yeah, linear wise. And a person named Daryl Anka channels Bashar. And what I love about Bashar is very left-brained. It's a lot of just like logical formulations, equations. It's just no nonsense. Like this is what's up. Yeah, I really appreciate how the message is delivered. But Bashar nicknames us the masters of limitation. He says that many other intelligent species in other dimensions, other planets, are not nearly as disconnected from the light as Earth is. So for us to be this far removed from the light and to be cast this far into darkness, but still choose love and still choose empathy, it's a powerful example to the rest of creation. A lot of creation looks at Earth and it's just like, holy shit, this is crazy. We are the most insane reality TV show happening in the universe. All eyes are on us. So yeah, kind of a fun thought. Who really knows, right?
You know what though? That does sound so self-indulging. Like
it does.
We're the best one that's out there out of all of these. You know, who knows how many galaxies and planets and potential, you know, incarnations could exist.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It seems like, you know, Earth is center of the universe kind of talk.
A little bit, huh? Yeah. You know, Abraham calls it the leading edge. And
Yes.
I don't think we could be the leading edge without having the most contrast. So.
Ooh, that is a great point.
And to be fair, we have come a long ways. I mean, we have killed each other in the most violent ways possible in just the name of God. So I think we've come a long ways. Now we can say, oh, what? No way. Like, it can't be that bad. But based off of where we've come from, yeah, Earth's been a lot darker. So we could take some pride in choosing, in our intention to choose to be human at this time and place. So yeah.
Wow, that is a perfect place to wrap. I can't believe it. We have so many additional places that we can travel and go in this intellectually stimulating process of discovery of what the self is, what our incarnations are really all about. What is the purpose of all this Earth School? Why would we exist here? How have we connected historically? How do we connect in present tense? And where are we going in a future tense?
Yes.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
All right. And then where can everybody check you out at? How do they get in touch with you?
That will have to be on a follow-up episode. I currently don't really have a platform or anything.
Okay. Do you have an email? Do you have a phone number? Do you have anything like that you'd like to share?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'll share my email from back when I was 11 years old. It's thelegendoflee@gmail.com.
Oh, yes. Wow. All right. Your inbox will be flooded with questions for future episodes.
Oh man, people are going to be asking like, where did you get this information from? Do you have a source? Which is good. I'm actually looking forward to questions. This is all stuff that I've read and researched in the past, but I'd love to start reinforcing these sources and having citations. And yeah, this will be good for me. So bring it on.
That's right. All right. Let the games begin. All right, brother. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. And until the next time, thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.
Dude. You as well.
All right. Later, bro.
Peace, man.